hear me joining the session. Nice to see you all today. So we have here again Mikkel from Asana, and we will discuss with him some questions with regards to enterprise sales. Okay, so you can all still add your questions in the Q&A chat. And then I also have some questions from the previous session. So Georgi was asking, first of all, he said, thanks for the talk. How do you think sales process differs for product company versus service company?
Good question. I've actually never sold product. I've only ever sold services. So I will be guessing here. But for me, selling services is you're somehow selling something in many ways, especially if you're in software as a service, in a let's say an industry or solution where you're providing something that's disruptive. So if I could give the example of back when I joined LinkedIn, I came from professional services with PwC, where you could sell something that was quite well defined, an audit, piece of tax work, a transformation project, which somehow you could also say there are some intangibles in there. But what we were very much selling was a new way of working for. So we were selling a vision. We were selling a vision of something that people maybe could see out in the horizon or had heard about, but hadn't actually worked with. HR had not really worked at marketeers at that point. So you're selling the prospect of something that you can't sort of touch and feel, that you can't necessarily, you don't have experiences with it, and you're not replacing something. So I think, in my experience, I mean, there are new and innovative products out there, of course, but many products you're often replacing an existing product. Whereas I think in the SaaS space, often you're providing something disruptive and new. So that would be the key thing. I hope that answered the question.
If I may, from our perspective, as I also have some like small experience of working with startups and product companies as well. I think that actually selling for product companies will always be easier, because as you mentioned, when you're working for a service company, you have something really, something coming from the thin air, something that's, of course, it might be disruptive, it might be very innovative, it can help fine-tune your processes, can improve your approach to the customer, etc., etc. But still, you cannot touch it. It's not feasible. But when you're selling the product, you're coming up with a product deck. You're coming up with something you already made. It's not really different from what we had before. Before, like, we invented like software companies, etc. I mean, like, it still can be a little bit similar to what we had before with all the huge sale and advertising industry of 20th century, but you just put some innovative touches to that. I mean, like, you're using digital tools, you're using digital advertising, and so on. But what's more important, I think, it's that you need to care more about the customer, and the product should really solve the problem. This is, I think, the key thing anyway in any industry, be it software, be it product, be it service, whatever.
Yeah, obviously it always has to solve a problem, but I think in software as a services, if we're talking sort of product in terms of hardware, that is more tangible in many ways than a service solution that potentially is also cross-functional and involves multiple users at the front end at a user level. So you've got these layers. You've got the this can be Asana, this could be LinkedIn, this could be Salesforce, this could be DocuSign. You've got the user, you've got the manager, you've got the leaderships, then you've got IT behind it. So you've got multiple stakeholders, I would say.
Okay, thank you. I think we should move to the next question. What book or online course would you recommend to learn more about this topic?
Of which topic, sorry?
I think the topic we are talking about in general with you today, like
Ah,
sales and remote team.
yeah. If I would encourage people to learn more about it.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's I'm a political scientist by trade or by training, who somehow ended up in sales, and I find it fascinating because there's so many dimensions to it. You know, there's the psychology, there's the politics of it, there's the business side of it, and I think there's a lot of good literature out there. So some of the methodologies I mentioned there. Some of those I've been trained in, some of those I've read about, some of those I've read, read the book, done the course, all of that. And as you go through your sales career, you sort of pick and choose from different parts of it. So I can strongly encourage anyone to go to your nearest bookstore or Amazon and find good literature on sales, account management, etc.
But what books would you recommend, first of all?
So Challenger Sales has been a good book. That's one I recommend because it takes that.
Write it in a public chat for people to follow.
Yeah. So there's Challenger Sales. Then there's also one of the early ones I trained in, which is not used that much in software as a service. So we trained in that when I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it's Franklin Cowrie helping the client, which I thought was a really good take on sales. Actually, Franklin Cowrie has a number of good books there. And then this might be a little off, but you have David Meister. So this is he writes a book about being a trusted advisor. So this is very much to the consultative sales, where I think if you've worked in consulting before or want to explore more around how to be a consultative salesperson, I think you can draw from books like from David Meister. He's several books around being the trusted advisor, first amongst equal, how you lead in a virtual team where people are not directly reporting to you. Those are some, and then there's a few books just on global account management. I forget the title now. I did read those early on when I started as account manager, but about the global account management, I mean, there's tons of books out there I could recommend. Howard Business Review is always a good source for books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actual business reviews are amazing source for books.
Yeah.
I read a couple of them, and it's really like you're learning from the real examples. That's not assumptions or something you just guessed. Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next question. Koba says that it would be much better to provide a self-hosted solution from Asana. What
Okay.
do you think?
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing that. I was not planning to pitch to have this turn into a sales pitch, but would of course relish the chance. By self-hosted, Koba, do you mean on-premise or where you can download a version to work on offline? Is that what you mean?
Koba, can you hear us?
Just want to make sure I interpret the question correctly.
Hey, just left the question and left the conversation.
Okay.
Yes, on premise.
Yes, on premise. Okay. Well, thank you for asking that. That's a fair question. As someone who's come from from traveling sales and you know, the PwC back in the days where I did do a lot of this. I see where you're coming from. I can say it's currently not on the roadmap. It's currently, yeah, it's currently not on the roadmap, and I personally haven't seen a lot of demand from it. But I would say do check in with us later to see if that gets on the roadmap. But for now, it's available. Well, if connection is there, it's available 24/7 in the cloud.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions in there? Not yet. Okay. I have a question. I have many questions for you.
Please.
So you worked in LinkedIn.
Yes.
This is something very, very interesting, actually, because LinkedIn is popular not everywhere, as I can see. It's popular from country to country differently. And the question is, why is so? Is it depend on the particular country, or is it just the interest from LinkedIn, which is either is there or not there, and you were not just focusing on some particular countries or regions?
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Very good question, actually. I think, I mean, the regions that I worked in, it was very popular, but the adoption happened at different stages. I think you saw, so Germany, for instance, had a competitor called Sing, which they is still there, but LinkedIn slowly but surely overtook it. So Germany took a little longer. Same for France initially, but that competitor local platform was quickly overtaken. But then when I actually managed a team for Central Eastern Europe, and I was responsible for Hungary and Romania, and both countries were popular, especially Romania. Hungary less so, and if I remember correctly, I'm not sure it was translated. So some of it also has to do with translation, and you'll have to forgive me. I don't remember if it was, for instance, in Georgia, was it translated? Was it translated there? So some of it has to do with that. For instance, in the Nordics, Finland, it was not translated, so Finland was slower to take on, but eventually they did. Then I remember Japan. For some reason, Japanese professionals had just gotten on Facebook very early and seemed that was okay. So that was one that was tough to crack. So is there something culturally? Good question. There could have been in some countries. I don't think so. I think a lot of it had to do with sort of the rate of rolling out LinkedIn, and then languages. And in some countries, you really needed to be translated into the local language to fully adopt.
Mm-hmm. I see. Because also another question here is with regards to the industry. Like, I mean, LinkedIn is the professional platform where everyone can log in and find the job or partner or customer. But if you would try to find for someone working in the entertainment or creative industry,
Yep.
you will not find that many people from that industry on LinkedIn.
No. I mean, it definitely caters to, and I suppose I can speak freely now as an ex. But it does vary. I mean, what we saw in the countries that I worked in that grew to be very mature. Initially, it was white collar workers, as you would call it in American English, so office workers, knowledge workers. But gradually, we also saw more from truck drivers. Factory workers joining. Then I think as it evolved, I think you had different subsets of industries. So programmers, for instance, like they moved to other platforms. Just some of them because they just got fed up with being but most people maintained a LinkedIn profile. And actually, to the point about creatives, I know in some countries it hasn't caught on. That's one I always wondered about, because LinkedIn is actually, if I may say, and again I'm speaking here without being a LinkedIn employee, is it's very good for creatives, because you can add, at least in those days, you could add a lot of collateral, so you can add video, you can add, actually you can add a lot of content to display your creative productions. Um, but it's true, some of those will, journalists will hang out on Twitter, and I think you've got a much more varied landscape now. But I have to say, I mean, I think LinkedIn has succeeded in most places to create the backbone, let's say. So you may be more active in others, but you still have a LinkedIn profile.
That's
So
true.
yeah, so I think it's really it has established itself as the backbone for many. But then to your point, others are also active in other forums right now. So if you need to engage, you really need to think, multi platform. I would say, as a recruiter, for instance, if you need to engage.
That's absolutely true. I agree on that. Why I'm asking about LinkedIn is because I can see that it can be a great lead searching source for any kind of startup. And now, getting back to our
Yes.
topic of the Q&A, startup founders, they should always understand the logic standing behind LinkedIn, so that they would be able to understand who and how to approach there. And for instance, recently I got some message from one of the foreign startups that is maybe trying to enter Georgian market. I don't know, like there are big plans, but like okay, Mikkel got frozen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. So Georgian startup, foreign company entering Georgia.
Yeah, probably, because like I'm indicated as a living in Georgia in LinkedIn. So I was approached by some foreign startup who wanted to enter the Georgian market, and the guy has just offered to me the service, just like with a blind cold message. And I'm wondering, like, is it really okay to just send out just cold messages everywhere to everyone? Or is it better to try to learn the person's profile, try to understand the interests, and then try to hook that person and start the message, start the conversation with something that might be more relative to that person? I mean, like, build this empathy.
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. So the core of social selling is that you find you find something that you can connect around, or is that shared connections, are there shared interests? You especially if you're doing, and what you should do is very targeted outreach. You should do your research and make sure that you speak to that person, so it's clear that you're not just sending a cut and paste type message. Um, I mean, and this is not just for LinkedIn. This is also for your general outreach. I mean, I can show you my inbox. I filtered it at one point, and it's just I scroll down like message after message about some standard message about these are extraordinary times, or there were like after the first 3 weeks of lockdown in most countries. I have 90 messages that could be written by the same person. I have no idea if, and it's 90 different products, and it's so really, and the same applies in LinkedIn. And I would always say, if someone is just reaching out to you, without a message, never feel obliged to respond or accept, unless you feel that you want to. There's no points for having the most contacts. It's about having the right contacts in your network, because you are letting them into your network. So but definitely tailor your message. Use sort of the principles of social selling in terms of finding common relations, common interest, common have gone to university together, or studied together, or worked together, etc.
Yeah, and also a good point always is, we should have met with you at the conference that was last Sunday. Maybe I have joined the conversation. And then here you go.
Yeah, Yeah, and what you can do, I mean, what some of my reps will do, and this is, slightly, it's not stalking, but they'll follow a person. Let's say we want to get in touch with a stakeholder, so follow them on LinkedIn, and maybe like some of the comments, or just understand what they are reacting to, what are their interests.
Yes, that's true. Also, what are the hooks and some specific themes that you could recommend for startups to use in their communication for sales, especially at the beginning when they are rolling out absolutely new product on the market. Nobody heard about them. Nobody knows about them. What they should start with.
That's a big question. Where do you start from? I mean, it depends on the obviously on the category. So if you're creating a new category from start, then of course you need to provide some reference points to your prospects, so that they understand sort of where you fit in, and that can be to is it a, let's say, is your product or service an evolution of something that's already is already on the market, but has disrupted your provide a better a new angle to it. So I would say you'd have to contextualize it a bit, if that makes sense, where you to make them understand quickly, where does this fit in. But then the if it's new or if it's existing, it it still has to be relevant to the person that you're. So I would say the point sort of around relevancy, and always making sure, why should I care? Always ask your question. If you're writing to someone, why should that person bother to open the email and read it, and hopefully respond to you? And that's no different from a startup to selling, to approaching them for the Sana or Salesforce or anything. They ask yourself that question before you hit the send button. And then, but then we get into the whole, let's say the everything that goes on before I get involved or my team get involved is around creating awareness of the category of your product, and that's a question for my marketing colleagues as well, but at a small scale, of course, without the marketing, without the huge marketing budget, you need to be very targeted there, and and find that key audience that you can try and influence early on, I would say.
Yeah, this is actually a really wide topic. Also, I have here another question for startups, like startups, but they are not just you sign up to their trial and you start using it, and then you just pay the monthly subscription and it works. But there are some startups that are going strictly for enterprise sales. I mean, they still need to go and directly speak with people of like company representatives to where they need to sell. And then the question is, should the startup firstly actually build up the trustful brand, and to whom they should address this trustful brand? To the company tops, to the company marketing, or any other department they will address in the end as their primary client? I mean, because we had some talks with startups and they are trying to firstly just sell, but when it comes to it, nobody heard about them yet. So
Yeah.
the question is, should they firstly work on their communication and brand awareness and then start pushing their product to the clients? Or they should start with selling directly to clients and just building this personal conversation with the clients, and
Yeah.
then move further? I don't know, like, can can suggest any ideas on that?
Well, I would, my personal opinion, I'm sure there are many different theories and some would probably have a different perspective on it. I'd say, I mean, you need to get the product out there and you need to start engaging in conversation. So you need to, you need to have someone that's road testing it and get it out there. Of course, brand awareness is always important. In any industry and at any stage or any whatever sector you're going towards, but into enterprise specifically is challenge. I mean, that is the hardest nut to crack, so to speak, I would say, because are you so I've previously predominantly worked with a mix of bottoms up and top down, meaning that there has been a demand either through marketing or through just word of mouth. There's been a demand from users and from teams, and this is true for Asana. This was true for LinkedIn. This was true for DocuSign. Many of sort of the freemium model companies out there. And then you build on that. You build champions. They take it to their boss, who takes it to their boss, who takes it to their boss, and so on and so forth. And before at some point you'll get an audience with a CIO, or you get to present there. So, and then you can engage more in the top down selling. But the top down selling, without some some contacts or working stakeholders in different parts of the organization, in my experience, is difficult. I mean, you need a even at LinkedIn. I mean, early days, that was still a combination of an HR manager that helped to push it, maybe with an HR director. And then in some cases, you'd start with the VP of HR or SVP of HR. So be mindful of the stakeholder environment. So to your question, should they focus on one or the other? I wouldn't say so. I would say both. And then if it depends also. I mean, if the project is how niche it is, if it's targeted towards a very specific, let's say in supply chain, for instance, is very specific for a function, then of course you can quicker go to the head of or to the top down sales, but always think about the multiple stakeholders that you have involved in the business, centrally at leadership.
Yeah, because in the end, like not only head of department or CEO or something like that will work with the product. In the end, it will be the whole department working with.
Yes.
So yeah, it will be very, very useful to work with all of them. And I think the last question will be, sorry.
No. Go ahead. We'll take last question. That's fine.
Okay. Last question would be, at what points do you think the startup would actually hire a salesperson? I'm asking this just to understand, like, from the very beginning, the founders themselves and the founding team should be the sellers in the first place, right? And then there are some points of the development of the company comes where they are ready to hire the sales manager, the salesperson. What moment that could be in the development of the startup? How do you think?
Well,
when it's
yes,
time?
I'm biased, of course, as a sales manager and a salesperson, so I would say immediately. It really depends. I mean, some founders, some co-founders are excellent at selling. They are, they'll always be passionate about their product. But if you come from the product side, I would say I would encourage to bring someone in with experience and expertise in sales from a very early on. From early on, what I would be careful. Think very much about the person that you're bringing in, because an early salesperson will have to do a little bit of everything. We'll have to do what we talk about, sort of the scrappy startup or the scrappy hunter. So you don't want to bring someone in with 15 years of enterprise sales in a huge organization, unless you're very sure that they can switch their mind to this environment where they have to do a little bit of everything, and things are not going to be in their plate. They have to invent themselves. They have to write the playbook as they sell. So think very much about that. A company that I'm on the board of, they have taken in external help to help write the playbook, to help write the processes. That's an option too. Find a coach, someone who can coach and advise during the early stages in writing the playbook. But really, just like you think about your solution, there has to be a product market fit if you go into a new market or into any market. Think about the same. I think about the let's see the rep company fit or the rep product fit. Like the person you're bringing on board has to be right for that stage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I've come up with one more question. Sorry.
You're fine.
It's actually a huge pain point here in our region in CE. I've been talking with many startups who really suffer with going abroad with their product, with scaling to the other markets. And especially it's hard when it comes to a little bit different culture or very different culture and very different mindset. So, for example, recently I've been reading some piece of advice for some Ukrainian guy who helps startups to enter the US market. He said that you should really go to the US and live there for kind of 2-3 years in order to really get the local culture and mindset and business needs. And only then you can actually scale your startup to the US market if it was initially developed in, I don't know, in Ukraine or in Poland or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think they are always looking for somebody who would help them with business development and sales in these other markets. Sometimes co-founders are just split, and one stays in their original country, and the second one is going to that market they want to conquer. Do you think there are, or maybe any companies that could actually provide some kind of consultancy or business development services to startups from other countries in, let's say, Western Europe or US? Maybe you heard about something like that. I mean, like, we are really looking for solution here.
Yeah.
I have no idea how to do this.
I don't know any off the top of my mind. I know, and I'm sure they exist there. Out there, there are companies that provide sort of business development services, but many of them do that globally, but they'll have offices locally. I think the idea of spending time in a country is a good idea. I mean, I've heard of some that they'll move the whole office to another country for 4 weeks or a month or 2 months or so to get started. But I would say absolutely. I mean, local knowledge is essential. Do you have to move there for 2 or 3 years? I'm not sure. I think you can move there and then you can hire someone or find someone that that are locally. But I would say even before that, really think about if the US is the right thing to go straight from Ukraine to the US. There might be something in between, closer to home. So that is a big one to take on from as your first market. So really consider your ability to do it. I mean, you can, that has to match.
That's true. Thank you a lot for your thoughts and advice. So I also know that you're actually consulting startups on sales, right?
I'm currently I'm sitting on a board, but other than that, it's not formally. No, I'm not formally consulting other startups.
Okay.
But anyone, please, happy to connect with me, and I'll do my best if there's any questions, and answer you over LinkedIn. And then happy to stay in touch.
Yeah, that would be lovely. And also, we will be happy to invite you as mentor for our future programs for startups, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's absolutely talk about that. I will. I'll do my best, and I have to make sure my day job is managed as well. Uh, but uh, but my contact details are there, and you know, if you want to connect, connect with me on LinkedIn. Write a few words on what's on your mind, and if I can answer, I'll answer. If I know someone who can answer, I will introduce. And if I don't have an answer, I'll let you know as well.
That's perfect. You know, always need to know the age of the knowledge. That's amazing. Cool. Thank you a lot for your time. Sorry for ruining your travel.
It's okay. It's okay. We have another 9 hours ahead of us, so we'll get back on the road and hopefully arrive this evening.
Okay, safe travels to you, and see you in the event chat if you'd like to join us later on.
I'll try and do it, not while I'm driving, but I'll check in at the next gas stop. Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for listening, and everyone, and for your questions. And I wish you a good continuation of your event. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you a lot.
Bye bye.
So next we will bye. Next we will have a small break, and after that we are waiting for you all to join our session about future of tourism and travel. See you.